My son, Warren, who got me into it, and I have painted all these throughout my life, but I've never thought I was a painter. But I discovered after he mentioned it that I have so many paintings I have done. So I said, well, it's up to you. So the Warren is the one who started. When he graduated from high school, and I think that's the time, he wanted to go to an art school, and actually I was trying to dissuade him. Until you achieve a certain fame, you have to struggle through. But anyway, at the same time, I was very glad because I loved the paintings anyway. This is one of my favorite, just because I was almost unconscious. So for some reason I came out there, the walk around. I love to walk around the forest anyway. And stopped at here. For some reason I started painting. Later on, I looked at it, I couldn't find the reason why I painted this. Didn't have a title or anything at that time, but I titled it Tears of Pines, because that's what I felt. Deforestation, which was horrible. And I imagined these to be tears. I imagined that these two deer, like me and my wife, we're getting old. Perhaps we're in the twilight of our lives. Almost unconsciously, I started almost like an Asian painting style, with a broad strokes, and the other things are not just simply hues and shades are not even put it in. And that's the way I painted. And then I went on to paint like Western style. This style of painting is completely Oriental or Asian. In the Asian paintings, painting is a part of a twin art with calligraphy. The brush strokes and the inks and the black and white. And also, in the Asian art, it is closely tied to poems. But even in the painting in general, I consider the beginning, initial, bold movements and strokes that you use with the brush is the crucial part of the paintings. In other words, it provides a unity and structure and the framework. My wife had a stroke in 2003. So before that time, we used to go back to Korea quite often, just for a visit. And this is one of these occasions where I took pictures of countryside. And we were driving through the road, and I just stopped by there. I love this farmhouse. So then I came home. I had a lot of pictures taken, of course. And I picked this one and started painting. The style is a little bit not typical of Asian style. A lot of tiny strokes I use. So compared to the other things I have done in the Asian style, this is a little bit of a mix. You see, this is a more typical Asian style, and although I use the acrylic, but it is typical in the sense that we have a poem, and my pen name there, 98. So in this case, I had a model in a collection of Chinese paintings, old ones. And I used that model to create my own vision. In the Asian culture, for intellectuals, always two different roads. One is to participate in the society actively. The other is retire from it, retreat from it, and live a clean life in a mountainside. This is the typical scene. And the poem here reads something like this. Water is cold, but you see rolling stones. Through pines you hear the breeze in the evening.
This is something I've been wanting to have happen, which is to have a major showing of my work here in the Monterey Peninsula. And I have a couple local galleries that show my work, but none of them are really giving me or exposing my work in a more major way. So I decided, since I wasn't getting the opportunity elsewhere to show my work, I decided to organize this exhibition on my own with cooperation with the PG Art Center. And so this idea was born. And along with this idea, so much more sort of blossomed from this, the main being my retrospective coffee table book that was published in conjunction with this exhibition. And this is the book. It's a handsome coffee table book, 112 pages, and I think about 80 to 90 color images. I basically dedicate the book to my father, and I mention in it that I consider him to be one of my greatest influences. He's a philosopher. In fact, he just wrote a book on Confucius. He really challenged me about art as far as mainly about the meaning of art. And that's something I think, if anything, that if I have an ace card in my deck, I think it's really the thinking behind my art that really gives it strength. Yeah, this one is called Aisha. I think it's called Aisha Against the Wall. And it's one of the paintings I'm very fond of. It's in private collection now, and I was fortunate enough to borrow or have on loan. I think about a third of the paintings in this exhibition are all on loan from private collection. This is one of them. It's probably my favorite of the group of paintings, of these portrait paintings that begin the exhibition, which are all, by the way, painted from life, which to me is very important. This young woman was a student at the Academy of Art University, and she was modeling for my class. I saw this painting by Eastman Johnson. Eastman Johnson was well known for documenting a lot of the African Americans in the 19th century, which were at that time slaves. And so he did this one painting, and something about her reminded me of that painting. And so I brought a dress, or the hoodie that she's wearing, that was similar to the kind of costume that Eastman Johnson's model was wearing. And I lit her and posed her exactly the way Eastman Johnson did. And I sat there ready to paint her. And just then I was helping a student on the side, and I saw this particular angle, and I was like, oh my God. And I don't know whether I talked the student out of his position or what, but somehow I switched positions with him and I got to another angle. And I painted this. It took about 2 or 3 sessions. And I just thought it just was like magic happening. I usually don't say that about my paintings. It's never magic, it's just a lot of hard work. But in this case, it just seemed to paint itself. I think this is probably one of my most popular paintings that I've ever done, or favorites of the people I know, and publishers and so forth. It's called Father and Son, and it seems very apropos for this particular exhibit because of my father's exhibit and my exhibit happening in tandem. So father and son, only this goes one more generation. This painting is in private collection again. It's one of the paintings where I would never have wanted to sell. somebody talked me into purchasing it. And so, and of course, I regret having done that. And I think it turned out to be one of my more favorite paintings, and maybe more popular paintings, not by myself, but I think by others. There's an interesting story behind this one too, because the private collectors who happened to have this particular painting, they were not allowing its exhibition. It had never been exhibited before. In fact, I had noted on this description card that this first time it's ever been exhibited ever. And actually, I'm miscorrected there because I later found out, I think it was my wife who mentioned, wasn't that painting in the Triton Museum? And I was like, yeah, it was. So this is the second time it's ever been exhibited, ever been seen before. And again, she was very gracious to allow me to show it, have it be exhibited here in this exhibition. But still, she had refused other exhibitions, and I don't know whether I'll be able to show this again. This may be the last time it's out in the public. So I actually painted another one. And the other one is a vertical version, and it's more, this was in 2007, so the new one is 2010. So this time I included both my children in the picture. And it has a different kind of a flavor to it. I don't know whether it's better or whether it's the same or whether it's not as good, but it's a different version. At least I have a new one. And hopefully nobody will talk me out of selling this new one. This one is called Harvester's Resting, which is inspired by the painting by Francois Millet of the exact same title. And I had a lot of fun with this painting because just the whole planning, everything was planned from beginning to end. You know, I'd seen the original painting by Francois Millet, and it's hanging, I think, in the Boston Museum. So I came up with this initial idea, but it's an updated version because rather than the French peasants of the 19th century, we have here contemporary migrant workers of the Salinas Valley. But in this case, it's really manufactured. I worked from photographs, and I couldn't actually, although I could have, it would have been nice to use actual field workers in this painting and have them pose for me, but unfortunately they were not there available for me. So I used students, professional models, friends, put them in hoodies, and it all had started from a thumbnail sketch which I worked out, and then they all sort of saw their roles or actors, sort of like acting roles in the thumbnail sketch, and all would immediately know what they were supposed to do, and they arranged this figural arrangement and took photographs, and that was how I was able to piece together this picture. And there's a color study also for this, a very thorough color study, which sometimes sort of takes the magic out of the actual painting itself, I mean the actual physical painting of the picture, because all the joy, all the solution of the color, all the things that happen spontaneously have already been done in the color study. And a lot of times, I think I've heard from others, my color studies I like them better than the finished paintings. And so, but still, I think that's the best way to ensure high quality work when you're working in larger scale. These are two of my favorite paintings. In fact, when asked which was my favorite painting of all, I actually selected this one here. I think that came to maybe surprise to many who were probably thinking more like Father and Son or a self-portrait or something like that. But this one, right at the moment, is my favorite painting. These two paintings are scheduled to go to Beijing, China, at the New World Art Museum in 2012. They're part of a group exhibition of American realism. And to be honest, these were actually, particularly this one, was personally selected by the museum officials. They wanted this painting to be included in the exhibition upon personal request. But these two paintings were originally created for a special exhibition in 2010 called Hard Times, An Artist's View, which was an exhibition that started at this gallery in Utah, went over to the Springville Museum, was supposed to go to the Butler Institute in Ohio, but ended up finally at the Salomon Gundy Club in New York City. And so it was this traveling exhibition, but it was one that I was very proud to be participating in because of the company I was keeping with, because some of the other artists I was participating who actually got me, one was Max Ginsberg, who's a well-known social realist in New York City, who was my former teacher and very good friend, and he got me involved in this. Other artists were Burton Silverman and Harvey Dinnerstein and Stephen Assell, to name a few. So some artists of very high stature. More than anything, it was the theme of the exhibition that really got me going. It was this exhibition about hard times, basically social realism in 2012, or 2010, I'm sorry, at the time. And so here was contemporary social realism, and it was really something about hearkening back to our economic times today. We're hearkening back to the times of the Depression era, which also, I think, inspired a lot of great art in the WPA period. So I think that was the kind of thing that I really could get my teeth into and was really excited to paint. So this particular painting was on my right is called Portrait of Bill. And I did a lot of research to find just the right actor to play the part of my homeless man. Of course, it wasn't an actor, it was a real homeless man. I went to homeless shelters, I went to homeless areas where they would gather with no luck. I mean, I just could not find the right person who I thought would portray what the meaning I wanted behind the painting. And finally, I just stumbled upon this man at a coffee shop in Pacific Grove, and which I find is interesting because I think this could be anywhere USA. I mean, you'd probably think more like San Francisco or New York, but it's Pacific Grove. And I just came up and asked him to model, and he graciously said yes. And so he posed for this. And this other painting is similar. It's a painting of a drifter on the highway, again in Monterey County. This one was my favorite one because I was showing these paintings to a good friend of mine, and he looked at both of these and he said, well, this painting here, this man, he could exist in all times. You'll see this kind of man in any time or any era. There's always going to be this sort of man that's going to exist regardless of the economy, regardless of the situation. But this man, he said, this man is able-bodied. This man is able-bodied. He kept repeating. And I said to him, what do you mean he's able-bodied? And he said, well, he's fit, he's strong, he can work, but he's not working. That would be me if I lost my job. I would be right there beside him. And then I realized that this painting represents a greater majority of the everyman. Both these paintings are not something that people would want to hang on their walls. You know, I don't think that people would want to hang this over their dining room. But you know, I don't paint pictures because I'm trying to paint things to hang over people's dining rooms. I paint pictures because I think that they're important or they need to be painted. I wanted to embrace my roots. I was an illustrator for 20 years, and I segued into fine art. And I think my fine art is quite different than my illustration. So this painting behind me is a throwback to my days as an illustrator. I hadn't done an illustration in over 10 years, and so I didn't really want to go back doing that again. You know, in illustration, you're painting other people's ideas. Fine art, I'm painting my own ideas and expressing my own feelings. I was approached by a New York advertising agency, and they asked me to do a 18th century inspired Old Masters painting for Jameson Whiskey. Jameson Whiskey has this campaign where they have these sort of heroic Paul Bunyan stories about their founder, John Jameson, who does these, you know, almost outlandish kind of feats of heroism.
For those who knew better. When it took the mason's daughter, it was tragic. When it took a barrel of John Jameson's whiskey, well, that was another matter. But Jameson was generous. And the hawk, greedy. Very greedy. And in the end, the pursuit of the whiskey would prove foolish for the Hawk of Ackle.
So they came up with this one particular idea that they wanted me to paint, and they said they wanted a fine artist. They didn't want an illustrator, and that's what talked me into accepting this job. Although I have to say, once I started working with them, pretty much I was treated like an illustrator. And the ad agency had quite a large budget, and they actually hired an art producer, and we hired professional models. Some of them are friends, local models, but are just people that I just run into, strangers that I thought were perfect for the part, and I'd ask them to pose or ask them to model for me. And we had a stylist and costumes and a professional photographer, and that's just so that they can give me photographic reference to do the painting. And once we got the sketch finalized, after 3 weeks of changes, they said, okay, when can you get the painting finished? And they wanted it like in a couple weeks. And I ended up looking at this painting and figuring out really quickly in my head how fast I could paint it. And I counted each figure, and I figured I could paint a figure a day. And then when I got to the smaller figures, I could paint 2 figures a day. So I gave them the figure 22 days, in which they said, 22 days? Okay, sounds good. And that day that I said 22 days, that counted as the first day. So it was a very high stress type of job. But at the end of it all, it's been a hell of a lot of fun because It's publicized everywhere. It's been on the subways of New York City. I think it still is on the subways of New York City. I've seen it in San Francisco on different advertising standees. And I think it has more of a life even after that. So it's really fun to see the results.